question is coming out of Virginia, and this comes from Christian W. And Christian writes in, question for you. I have a good friend of mine here in Virginia, just had a home built, closes today actually, and he had fresh turf-type tall fescue put down. Being that it's midsummer and temperatures have been 90 plus since the sod was laid, he's worried the grass isn't going to make it. He doesn't know much at all about lawn care, so my suggestion to him was to water like crazy and to find a fertilizer that was high in phosphorus for root development, and if he can, throw down some humic acid to help it that much further. Was this the right advice? Is there something else he could do? I don't want to steer him in the wrong direction. Thanks, Christian. So this was a great question, and it's one that happens to a lot of you guys because of the fact that when you have a house built, you can't necessarily control the fact that it gets finished in the spring, which would be the best time to sod, or in the fall, which might be the best time to sod. Basically, if you want to know the best time to sod is when the weather is not at an extreme. That is the best time to sod. So that would be an extreme cold, like freezing, or that would be an extreme heat, like the middle of summer, like we're in right now. And that doesn't matter what kind of sod it is. The best time to sod is when you're not at extremes. Now, the thing about that is, though, because it's sod, because it already comes fairly well ready to go, you actually do have a much wider ability to sod at any time of the year. Now, I think definitely you should not sod when the ground is frozen. If there's snow on the ground, you can't sod. I think that's pretty obvious. I know that there are some times in the transition zone and even in the South, people will do sod jobs when it's dormant and things like that. Those are outliers. Those are not what I'm talking about. Really what we're talking about today, though, is can you sod in the middle of the summer? And the answer is, while it is not the best idea, you certainly can do it, and you can be successful. So in Virginia, he's got turf-type tall fescue. Now, let's talk about one of the things real quick when it comes to sodding cool season turf in the summer, and I'm talking about Kentucky bluegrass, perennial rye, turf-type tall fescue for the most part. The challenge you have there is those grasses do not do well when temperatures are over 85. I'm talking about outdoor, outside temperatures. They just don't. Now, can they live? Yes. We have seen example after example after example of in our groups and in emails and everywhere else that I go online of folks that are on my program and using some of the products that I recommend who have come through the 100-degree temperatures in the last week unscathed. We've seen them in the group. People will say, look, I didn't even hardly water anymore, and look at my grass, and it's still double dark green, and this and this and that. So yes, having a healthy turf stand, your grass, your cool season turf can do well over 85. The reason I bring it up, though, is because it doesn't mean it's doing awesome. It doesn't mean it's saying, oh, thank you for this. It doesn't mean that your grass is going, yeah, let's just stay here all the time. No, it's under stress. It's just healthy, just like a human body that is healthy. If you are a healthy human, you can also take stress. Maybe you run into the same cold virus in the air that people around you do, but because you're healthy, because your systems are healthy, because you exercise and you eat right and your nutrition is there, you run into the cold virus or flu virus in the air and it doesn't affect you. It's not able to take hold. It's not able to manifest. Your body fights it off. It doesn't mean that it was good for you to come in contact with the flu virus. It doesn't mean that maybe as your body was fighting that flu virus off, you didn't feel slightly run down for a couple days, but you still went to work. People at work would have never known that you were down, that you were not feeling well, that you may have felt a little nauseated for 2-3 days over by there while you're sitting in a cubicle. Because you're still pumping out your TPS reports just like you always do, right? You're healthy. You're in shape. You can overcome those things. And the lawn is the same way. If you have a very healthy lawn with a healthy deep root system, it can overcome stress of over 85 degrees. By the way, it can also, if it's healthy, not only overcome that stress of 85 degrees, but disease spores in the lawn and high humidity and no airflow, which are things that bring the disease triangle together. Your grass can fight that off, just like you fight off that flu virus. So didn't want to chase that rabbit hole too deep, but you're getting the idea here. So over 85, your cool season turf doesn't like it, but it can be fine. But now let's go to sod. Let's think about sod. Sod's different. It's been grown on the sod farm. It's been in this perfect environment, and literally it is. I've been on many sod farms, and they are beautiful environments. If anybody knows how to grow grass, it's a sod farmer. Let me just tell you that. It's a sod grower. So the thing about that is it's been in that perfect environment, and then all of a sudden in the heat, so if your sod was delivered and it's 90 today, I promise you the sod was cut with only a couple days before that. They don't cut sod like months in advance. It doesn't have shelf life like milk. You can't keep it refrigerated. So any sod that you get was harvested the day before in most cases, and sometimes that day. So here you have the sod. It's in great growing conditions in the summer, in the sod farm, perfect soil, perfect everything, perfect irrigation, all of these things. It's all of a sudden cut out. It's got all of its legs just ripped out from under it. It's only left with this small amount of soil with a little bit of a root structure and system there, and its top growth, which has been shaved down. And now it's rolled up, stuck on pallets, trucked away from its environment, from its home, just ripped away, just completely ripped out of its home, its nursery, where it's been grown, where it's lived its whole life, and put on the back of a bumpy truck, taken down, I-65 in Northwest Indiana over by there, or in Virginia in this case. I don't know any highways over by Virginia. Bumped along the road, beating down heat, all kinds of things. Maybe it has to be trucked overnight. I don't know. So it has to live a night in a Motel 6 parking lot with strange vehicles around. Who knows, right? It doesn't know what's up. Then it comes on the back of a landscaper's truck, bam, gets dropped into your yard, sits there while they're over there massacring whatever the previous lawn was, or they're over there grading it off, all these big nasty machines around, dust flying everywhere. And then these guys come and they grope the sod, they drop it on this barren ground, and they walk away from it. And they leave it out in the sun, and now it's 90 degrees. That's a pretty rough life. That's not an easy thing. So definitely if you're that piece of sod, if you're that multiple pieces of sod that have had to go through that nasty road trip, and now you're in this barren ground that may not have been prepared right, besides just a grade, and now all of a sudden they're going to start dumping a bunch of water on you, and that's it. I can tell you that those 90 degree temperatures really affect that sod. They really stunt that sod. They hit it hard. But I can tell you can still be successful because grass is that resilient. And that's the testament here, is that grass is resilient. It is one of the most resilient plants on earth. What's the first thing that regrows after a forest fire? The grasses do. So I can tell you that is the thing you have going for you, is that you're growing turf grass and not something else. So the idea is, yes, you can do it in the summer, even though it's not the best, and even though 90 degrees is not the best, that's one of those extremes I talked about, it can still be done, and it can be done successfully. Now, what other advice would I give for establishing sod? I'll just run through it real quick, because I have established a lot of sod here at my house. I've established some Palmetto St. Augustine grass in the front, some Empire Zoysia on the side, and some Provista St. Augustine grass in the back. And so this is universal truth here, no matter what type of sod you had laid, where you live, all of that kind of thing. It's all going to be very, very similar. The first thing I will tell you that is on the bare ground, humic acid and sea kelp. We have a product called RGS, which stands for Root Growth Stimulator. RGS, Root Growth Stimulator. There is nothing better to put on new sod or new seed, but especially new sod, than Root Growth Stimulator. 3 ounces per 1,000 on the bare dirt before the sod goes down. Boom. If you miss that step, it's okay, because the next thing I want you to do is, after your first watering, I want you to apply another 3 ounces per 1,000 square feet of the RGS. So if you missed the first and you only got to the second, then go ahead and just do 6 ounces per 1,000 of the RGS on top of that sod right after your first watering. And of course, watering goes without saying. You want to keep underneath the sod, not the top of the sod. You want to keep underneath the sod constantly wet for at least 7 to 10 days. So I don't need it soaking. I don't need water pooling underneath it, but I need it damp. And that is because we want to allow those roots to get through. And as they move, we want them to be able to have moisture. We want everything to start working as normal underneath there. And moisture is the key to that. Anytime the sod dries up, it will stop. It will conserve energy and it will stop growing. So you want to keep it wet, and you want to make sure that it's getting wet underneath. So after each watering, go out and stick your hand underneath the sod in a couple spots, and you should just feel it damp. Now, after a few days, 5 or 6 or 7 days, depending, you should be able to pull the sod up and see white root hairs flying down through. In some cases, with my St. Augustine grass, I could see this within 3 or 4 days. It's going to vary, but definitely within the week there, when you lift the sod up, you should be able to look underneath and see the white root hairs starting to move down into the soil. That's good. Don't do anything else there. Keep watering like you are. Keep the thing constantly wet for another, 5 to 7 days or so. Also at that 7-day mark, 7 to 10 day mark, you can put down micronutrients. We have microgreen product. You put that down at 6 ounces per 1,000. That's already got more root growth stimulant built into it. It's got the sea kelp built in. It's got the humic acid built in, but it also has a nice micronutrient stack now that's going to help support this new sod. After 10 days to 2 weeks, after about 2 weeks, 14 days, you should not be able to pull the sod up anymore. If you yank on it, yes, but you should not really be able to pull it up, and you shouldn't really be seeing a lot of seams. If you put your sod together tight enough, no matter what the grass type is, there shouldn't be a lot of seams in there, and that goes back to preparing the dirt as well, preparing the ground underneath with a good finish grade. But definitely after 14 days, you shouldn't be able to pull it up. From there, keep watering. You might want to change your watering at this point to a little bit deeper and a less frequent, because now roots are starting to move down. So instead of watering all the time and keeping it wet all the time, we want to give it a good soak at least sometime in the later morning and encourage those roots to drive down deep. Now keep an eye on it, but in times when you're not in extremes, and hopefully by this point your friend would have been out of extremes here, Christian, and he won't have to do that. But after that 14 days, go ahead and switch it to every day in the morning, maybe once a day, and get it soaked deep. 5 to 7 days after that, maybe you're getting into watering 2 days, taking a day off, watering 2 days. You got to just kind of feel your way through it. The idea is to get that water switched over to the deep and infrequent. And after 30 days, you should be able to go on a normal watering schedule of watering every 2 days for a ½ inch. Again, keep things monitored, keep watching. Now, the other thing is, so you did your RGS at the start, you did a little bit of RGS a week later, and then a week after that, you did some micros. Go ahead and start doing regular on fert after 30 days. You can use whatever you like there. Nice ½ to ¾ pound of nitrogen. Put that in there. And after about 30 days on the sod, you can start pushing it. Now, if it's cool season grass, middle of the summer, no, we don't want to push it too hard. You continue with the RGS and the micros. Warm season turf, though, in the middle of the summer, if things are established after your 30 days, you can go ahead and start pushing in some nitrogen there. ½ pound, ¾ pound. Get her going, get it moving. You will be enjoying the mow at about 30 days. So that's a real basic way to get through sod. That's a basic way to get it established in the middle of the summer. Now, one of the things that Christian did ask about is, what about a high phosphorus content fertilizer? And I would say, in this case, turf type tall fescue, 90-degree temperatures, no. I would not put any NP and K down at really probably not any. I just don't want macros being pushed on cool season turf that has just been laid at 90 degrees. I don't want to do that. Now, when you get to the fall time, once you've been mowing a little bit and things are coming off, then a good dose of high phos would probably be a good idea to push out more roots before that turf type tall fescue takes its rest into the winter. Now, if you are going to sod in the fall, and I'm kind of rambling here a little bit, I like to take off a little bit, but if you're sodding in one of those windows that I would say is not going to be one of these extremes, then for sure you'd want to use something what we might call a starter fertilizer. If this was turf type tall fescue and it was being sodded in the fall time here in Virginia, when temperatures are going to be a little bit more mild, day temperatures are going to be, in the low 80s, high 70s, sometime in there, which is like ideal temperatures, well, then I would say you start off with a starter fert, man. We want some N, really high P, and some K in there. Let's get a nice starter fert down. Let's go ahead and push that sod out nice. You can still throw the micros in, still throw the RGS in, but when they got those milder temperatures, then we can give it some macros in the soil, so when the root structure does establish, it's got plenty of nutrients there to use. So there you go, Christian. That's an answer to your question. And Christian and I emailed back and forth a little bit on that as well, but I just wanted to share that with a lot of you because I figured you might be trying to establish sod, and really these steps are similar no matter if you're establishing in the summer or if you're establishing at more of the opportune times like the spring or the fall. The difference will just be the amount of water that you have to put down, but the steps are really pretty much the same minus the macronutrients.